The marble hall of the Manhattan Chess Society shimmered under golden chandeliers. Expensive suits, wine glasses, and polite laughter filled the air until a white Grandmaster named Gregory Voss turned, smirking at the man holding a mop. "Hey, you," he sneered. "Think you could even tell a knight from a pawn?" The black janitor, Deshaun Carter, looked up slowly. His dark hands tightened around the mop handle, but his calm never broke. The crowd chuckled. It wasn't the first time the staff were made into jokes. Gregory continued, "Come on, let's make it fun. You beat me. I'll buy you a week off." "I beat you? You admit cleaning floors is all you're good for." Murmurs rippled across the room. Everyone expected the janitor to laugh it off and walk away. Instead, Deshaun set the mop aside, stepped forward, and said evenly, "Set the board." A stunned silence fell. Cameras lifted. Whispers turned sharp. The janitor had just challenged a Grandmaster in front of his own crowd. Hook ends here. If this already made your blood boil, hit like and subscribe right now, because stories like this are still happening, and the world needs to hear them. As the crowd rearranged the chairs around the polished chess table, Deshaun quietly wiped his hands on his work pants. His uniform was faded, his shoes scuffed, but his eyes held the focus of a man who'd seen enough arrogance to last a lifetime. For 15 years, he cleaned the same club, the same boards, the same chairs where millionaires argued over pawns. Not once had anyone asked if he played. Not once had anyone seen more than the name stitched on his chest. While Gregory adjusted his cufflinks and sipped imported water, Deshaun's mind drifted to his father, the man who taught him chess on a wooden board scratched by time. His father's rule was simple. "Son, never underestimate quiet people. They're the ones who think before they strike." The noise of the room dimmed around him. Every face watching believed this was a joke, an amusement before dessert. But Deshaun wasn't laughing. He'd spent years studying the game he was never invited to play, memorizing moves while sweeping floors. Now, the same hands that scrubbed marble would move pawns across it. The board gleamed under the light, and for the first time, it was his turn to make the first move. The room went still as Gregory Voss sat across from Deshaun Carter, his smirk barely hiding his contempt. Expensive perfume and polish would fill the air. The contrast was sharp. The Grandmaster in a tailored suit, the janitor in a uniform with bleach stains. Gregory leaned forward, tapping his fingers on the board. "I'll give you white," he said, voice dripping with arrogance. "At least you'll get to move first before this is over." Deshaun studied him quietly, then slid his pawn forward 2 squares, e4. A few chuckles rippled through the crowd. Gregory grinned. The classic move from every beginner's book. "Let's see how long you last." He snapped his reply instantly. C5, the Sicilian defense. A line that crushed countless amateurs. But Deshaun didn't flinch. His next move came without hesitation. Pieces clicked like calm footsteps. His rhythm was steady, deliberate. Within minutes, Gregory's grin began to fade. The whisper started. "He knows theory? That's the Najorf." "Wait, how?" Each move stripped another layer of Gregory's confidence. He leaned closer now, eyes narrowing. "Where did you learn that?" Deshaun's gaze didn't lift from the board. "Right here," he said quietly, "while cleaning your trophies." A single gasp echoed from the back of the room. For the first time, the laughter stopped. "If this happened right in front of you, what would you do? Tell me in the comments. I read every one. And if you want justice as much as I do, hit subscribe." Gregory's hand trembled slightly as he made his next move. The arrogance that once filled the room had thinned into uneasy silence. Every player watching could see it. The Grandmaster was no longer in control. Deshaun's knight darted across the board, forcing Gregory's queen backward. The rhythm had shifted. Every time Gregory tried to attack, Deshaun was already there, calm, patient, and 1 move ahead. "Impossible," Gregory muttered under his breath. Deshaun's voice was steady. "You said this would be fun, right? I'm just getting started." The crowd pressed closer, phones recording. Each move became slower, heavier. Gregory's polished confidence cracked with every piece he lost. Sweat gathered at his temple. The janitor, meanwhile, looked peaceful, like a man simply cleaning one last mess. When Deshawn's rook slid into position with a quiet click, the board froze. A perfect trap. Gregory's king had nowhere to go. For a long, painful moment, the only sound was a hum of the ceiling fan. Gregory looked up, face pale. "Who are you?" Deshawn met his stare. "Someone you should have respected before the first move." Gregory leaned back in his chair, stunned. The applause hadn't even begun. No one dared move. The so-called janitor had dismantled the club's champion with quiet precision. "You tricked me," Gregory whispered. "You let me think," Deshawn interrupted softly. "I didn't let you think anything. You assumed." The words hit harder than any checkmate. People who'd laughed minutes ago now stared at Deshawn with a mixture of guilt and awe. His calm voice carried through the hall. "I've worked here 15 years. Watched every match, every opening, every mistake. I learned from the players who never saw me standing behind them." A reporter in the crowd asked, "You mean you've never been trained?" Deshawn shook his head. "No academy, no coach, just memory, patience, and time." He looked around the room. "My father taught me the game. He said chess is like life. You can't move forward if you only see the color of the squares." A hush fell again. Even Gregory lowered his eyes. The arrogance that once filled the club dissolved into quiet respect. Deshawn reached out, gently upright to topple King, and said, "It's not about who cleans the floor or who sits at the table. It's about who truly understands the game." The silence finally broke into applause, hesitant at first, then rising into thunder. Every eye was on Deshawn, the man they'd ignored for years, now standing taller than any trophy in the room. Gregory rose slowly, shame etched across his face. "I mocked you," he admitted. "I judged you before I even looked at the board." Deshawn gave a faint nod. That's how most games are lost, before the first move. The club president stepped forward, clearly shaken. "Mr. Carter, this was extraordinary. You reminded all of us what this game stands for. From today, you'll have a lifetime membership here." Deshawn shook his head gently. "I don't need titles or favors. Just make sure no one here is ever treated like they're invisible again." That line hit the room like truth breaking glass. Even Gregory lowered his head and extended his hand. Deshawn hesitated for a moment, then accepted, not as a gesture of victory, but of equality. From that handshake, something changed inside everyone watching. The crowd wasn't cheering for a winner. They were witnessing respect being restored, the kind that can't be bought, only earned. Later that night, the lights dimmed and the crowd was gone. The chessboards lay stacked neatly, and Deshawn was back to mopping the same marble floor. But this time, people passing by greeted him with nods, not glances that slid away. Gregory stopped at the doorway, watching quietly. "You changed more than a game tonight," he said. Deshawn smiled faintly, without looking up. "No, I just reminded everyone that every piece on the board matters, even the ones you call pawns." He wrung out the mop, the water rippling under the golden light. Somewhere between the shine of that floor and the silence of the room, the world had shifted, just a little. He whispered to himself, "Respect, that's the real checkmate. If you believe this should never happen again, share this now." And to my USA, UK, and Canadian viewers, your voice is power. Use it